of the most serious philosophers alive, has published a peer-reviewed argument that we are almost certainly living inside a computer simulation. The same person also writes about the risks of artificial superintelligence. His name is Nick Bostrom, and today we're going to sit with both of those ideas and see what happens when they collide.
It is a collision that keeps me up at night, and I don't say that lightly.
I can see that. You've got the large coffee today. Actually, is that a double?
It's a red eye, coffee with espresso, because the paper we're looking at today, Boston's, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? It's not something you can just gloss over. It demands your full attention.
Welcome to Bored Coffee Mug. We're deep diving into the nature of reality today. And look, I want to set the stage here immediately. I'm the humanities guy. I read philosophy. I look at art. I think about the human condition.
And I'm the physics and computer science brain.
Right. And usually when people hear simulation theory, they think of Keanu Reeves in a leather trench coat dodging bullets.
They do.
Or they think of a stoned conversation in a dorm room at 3 a.m. where someone says, whoa, what if, like, my hands aren't real?
Right. The stoner thought version of philosophy, it gets dismissed really easily.
Exactly. But that is not what we're doing today. This isn't science fiction. This is a rigorous logical argument derived from probability theory and observation selection effects. This is a paper that has kept physicists, cosmologists, and philosophers awake since it was published in 2003.
And that distinction is vital. We aren't here to discuss whether reality feels fake or if you saw a weird coincidence. We are here to look at a statistical argument that claims the probability of us being biological beings in a base-level reality, the real world, is astronomically low.
So our mission today is to explore this simulation argument, not just as a trippy concept, but as a lens for understanding physics, AI, and frankly, ourselves.
We have a massive amount of ground to cover. We're going to walk through Bostrom's original logic, the famous trilemma.
We'll spend a lot of time there.
We have to. Then we're going to look at the feasibility. Can we actually build a computer that powerful? We'll look at the it-from-bit physics angle and a fascinating specific theory about peer-to-peer simulations that might explain why quantum mechanics is so weird.
And we'll wrap up with the hard limits of computation and what this all means for the AI we are currently building. So grab your coffee. Let's get existential.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's unpack this. The simulation argument. I think most people hear that and think, okay, the theory is that we are in a computer. But Bostrom is very specific about the difference between the argument and the hypothesis.
He is, and it's a distinction that often gets lost in pop culture. The simulation hypothesis is the specific belief that we are currently living in a simulation. That's the conclusion, proposition 3.
Right.
But the simulation argument is the logical pathway that gets you there. Bostrom doesn't start by saying we are in a sim. He starts by saying that one of 3 propositions must be true.
It's trilemma, a 3-horn dilemma. You're forced to choose one.
Precisely. And the logic dictates that these 3 options cover all the reasonable possibilities for a technological civilization's trajectory. You can't really escape them. One of these 3 things has to be the case.
All right, lay them on me. What is door number 1?
Proposition 1. The human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage.
Post-human. Let's define that before we move on. That sounds like a Marvel movie term. What does Bostrom mean by that?
It just means technological maturity. It means a civilization that has developed most of the technologies that are consistent with physical laws. We're talking about mastery over molecular manufacturing, total control over our own biology, and crucially, computing power that dwarfs what we have today by orders of magnitude we can barely comprehend.
So a civilization that has basically maxed out the tech tree. They've researched everything possible.
Exactly. Proposition 1 says, we never get there.
Because we kill ourselves first.
Essentially, yes. This implies a great filter. It suggests that there is some hurdle in the development of life that is almost impossible to cross. As technology advances, the capacity for self-destruction increases exponentially.
It's not hard to imagine, sadly. I mean, you just have to read the news. We're sitting here with nuclear stockpiles that could sterilize the planet many times over. We're engineering viruses in labs. We're messing with the climate.
And ironically, we are building artificial intelligence. Bostrom himself has written extensively on this. The very tool that could get us to the post-human stage might be the thing that wipes us out before we arrive. An unaligned superintelligence is a classic great filter candidate.
So if proposition 1 is true, the story of humanity just ends. We hit a wall, we go dark, and consequently, we never develop the computer power to run realistic simulations of our own history.
Correct. If everyone dies before they invent the Matrix, then there is no Matrix. Therefore, we must be the original biological beings.
That is incredibly depressing. It's basically saying, don't worry, you're not in a simulation because you're probably going to die soon.
It is bleak. It's probably the bleakest of the three options. But strictly logically, it is a possibility. If civilizations inevitably self-destruct as they get powerful, then there are no advanced computers running ancestor simulations.
It's a kind of cosmic speed limit. Civilizations get smart enough to discover nuclear fission or synthetic biology, and that's the end of the line.
It's one very plausible explanation for the Fermi paradox for why the stars are so quiet.
Okay, cheerful start to the morning. Let's look at door number 2. Let's assume we don't blow ourselves up. We survive. We become post-human gods. What's the next option?
Proposition 2. Any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history. These are what he calls ancestor simulations.
So in this scenario, we do survive. We become super advanced, we have the computers, but we just don't turn them on. That seems unlikely to me. Humans are curious. We run simulations constantly. We play The Sims. We run climate models. We run models of the Big Bang. Why would we stop?
That's the debate. Bostrom suggests a few reasons for this strong convergence, meaning that all post-human civilizations, for whatever reason, decide against it. Maybe there is a convergence of ethical laws.
Ethics. How so?
Think about it. If you run a realistic simulation of human history, you are simulating every war, you are simulating the Holocaust, you are simulating the Black Death, you are simulating every heartbreak, every child's death, every moment of physical pain that has ever occurred.
Right.
If the simulated beings are conscious, which is a key assumption we'll get to, then running that simulation is a moral atrocity on an unimaginable scale.
I see. So a post-human civilization might look back at that and say, we have the power to do this, but is morally repugnant to create billions of conscious beings just to watch them suffer for our historical curiosity.
Well, exactly. It would be like running a torture chamber for research. Maybe it becomes the ultimate taboo, a universal ethical red line that no advanced society would cross. So maybe they ban it.
I could see that. But would every single one of them ban it? It only takes one curious civilization or one cruel one or even one subgroup within a civilization to start running them.
That's a strong counter-argument, but Bostrom suggests other possibilities. There's the other one, boredom.
Boredom. With the power of gods, they get bored.
Maybe simulating the past is seen as a primitive, boring hobby. Maybe post-human minds are so advanced that they prefer direct brain stimulation or exploring higher dimensional mathematics or merging into a collective consciousness or doing things our primitive monkey brains can't even comprehend.
So they look at us like we look at an ant farm. Yeah, we could build an ant farm, but why bother? We have, a direct neural interface to the fabric of space-time.
Essentially, the point of Proposition 2 is that even if they can run simulations, they just don't. For ethical reasons or reasons of taste or something else we can't imagine, the number of ancestor simulations run by post-human civilizations is effectively zero.
Okay, so let's review. Proposition 1, we die before we can do it.
The great filter.
Proposition 2, we can do it, but we choose not to for some reason.
The convergent prohibition.
That leaves door number 3.
Proposition 3, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation.
And this is where the math kicks in, right? Because if propositions 1 and 2 are false, then this isn't a guess, it's a conclusion.
Walk through the logic with me. If Proposition 1 is false, it means civilizations do survive to reach technological maturity. They don't blow themselves up. They get past the filter.
Okay, so they exist. These post-human civilizations are out there.
And if Proposition 2 is false, it means those civilizations do run ancestor simulations. They are interested in their past, and they don't have a universal ethical ban on it. Maybe they think it's important research or art or who knows.
So they exist, and they are running sims.
And because they are post-human, their computing power is astronomical. They wouldn't just run one simulation. It would be trivial for them to run millions, perhaps billions. They could run a simulation of the entire history of the human race over and over again, tweaking variables just to see what happens. What if the dinosaurs never went extinct? Run sim? What if Rome never fell? Run sim.
I see where the avalanche is coming from. It's a numbers game.
It's purely a numbers game. Suppose there is one real biological history, the basement reality. The one where the humans actually evolved from slime and built the computers. And suppose that this one advanced civilization runs, conservatively, just 1 million variations of that history as simulations.
So there is one real version of me having this conversation right now in a physical room, and 1 million simulated versions of me having this exact same conversation inside a computer.
And here's the kicker, the most important part of the whole argument. The simulated minds have experiences indistinguishable from the biological mind. From the inside, the simulated you feels exactly like the real you. He thinks he's real. He feels the warmth of his coffee cup. He's worried about his microphone levels.
You would have no reason to suspect he was the simulated one.
None whatsoever. So if you are a conscious being with these experiences, and you have to place a bet on your own nature.
Imagine a jar with 1,000,001 tickets. One ticket says biological,
Yeah.
1 million tickets say simulated. You reach in and pull out a ticket. You can't see what it says yet. What is the probability that you are holding the biological ticket? It's 1 in a million. I'd be a fool to bet I'm holding the biological ticket. It's just wildly improbable.
That is the statistical inevitability. Bostrom calls this the bland indifference principle. We have no specific evidence to suggest we are special or real because a simulated person would think the exact same thing. So we must assign credence based on the raw numbers. If the first two propositions are false, the third one isn't just a possibility, it is a mathematical near certainty.
So, to escape the conclusion that we are in a simulation, we have to hope that humanity is either doomed
Proposition 1.
or that our descendants will be universally and completely uninterested in their own past,
Proposition 2.
both of which seem a little unlikely to me, especially the second one.
Well, that's the trilemma. You have to pick one. None of them are particularly comfortable.
No kidding. Okay, let's talk about that technical barrier, because it's easy to say supercomputer, but we're talking about simulating an entire universe, or at least enough of one to fool us. Can we actually build it? Or is this just fantasy? This feels like where the science fiction part could creep back in.
This brings us to the concept of technological maturity and the raw physics of computation. And Bostrom did some back-of-the-napkin math on this, and it holds up surprisingly well. He estimates that to run a realistic simulation of human history, simulating the neuronal activity of every human who has ever lived, would require roughly 10 to the 33 to 10 to the 36 operations.
10 to the 36. I have no frame of reference for that. My laptop does what? A few trillion operations per second? A teraflop.
Your laptop is a grain of sand on a beach the size of the galaxy. 10 to the 36 is a number so large it's hard to visualize. But here is the comparison that Bostrom uses and others have refined. A post-human civilization that has mastered nanotechnology could build a computer the size of a planet.
A planet-sized computer. A Matryoshka brain.
Right. Or even a Dyson sphere, a structure that wraps around a star to capture all of its energy output to power computation.
A star-powered computer. Okay.
Exactly. A computer like that, using known physics, not magic, just advanced engineering, could perform roughly 10 to the 42 operations per second.
Wait, say that again. So the requirement is 10 to the 36 for all of human history.
All of it, from the first hominid to now.
And the computer can do 10 to the 42 per second.
Yes. That means a post-human civilization could run millions of full-scale ancestor simulations simultaneously, using less than a millionth of their processing power for a single second.
That is humbling. It's actually humiliating. It's like us trying to simulate a game of Pong.
It puts the cost argument to bed. We struggle to run Cyberpunk 2077 at 60 frames per second, but we are comparing an abacus to a Dyson sphere. The gap in capability between us and a post-human civilization is wider than the gap between an amoeba and us.
So it's not a question of resources. The resources are, for all intents and purposes, infinite from our perspective.
The resources are trivial for them.
Okay, so the hardware is possible, I'll grant you that. But there is a massive, glaring philosophical assumption here that we need to fight about.
I know exactly where you're going. Consciousness.
You can stack all the microchips you want, you can process all the data you want, but does that make a mind? Does that make me? I feel the warmth of this coffee cup. I feel anxiety about this conversation. I love my dog. Kin code feel.
The doctrine of substrate independence. This is the core philosophical assumption Bostrom relies on. It's the idea that mental states, consciousness, feelings, thoughts don't depend on a specific physical material like carbon or biological neurons.
Right. The idea that wetware isn't special. And as the humanities guy here, I have to pushback.
Yeah.
This is the thing about biology, the chemistry, the messiness of hormones and neurotransmitters. How can you say a silicon chip experiencing a 1 is the same as a neuron firing? It feels like a category error.
It's a valid objection. It's the hard problem of consciousness. But there's a famous thought experiment by the philosopher David Chalmers we're using as a source today called Dancing Qualia that addresses this. It tries to prove that functionalism, the idea that function is what matters, must be true.
Dancing Qualia, it sounds like a bad 70s disco band. Walk me through it.
Okay. Imagine we have a biological human. Let's call him Dave. We know Dave is conscious. He sees the color red. He feels pain. He has an inner life.
Standard issue human. Got it.
Now imagine we have developed a silicon chip that is a perfect functional copy of a neuron. It's not a neuron, it's a chip. But if you give it the same inputs a neuron would get, it produces the exact same output signal a neuron would. It behaves identically.
Okay. A digital replacement part.
Right. Now we perform surgery on Dave. We open up his brain, and we replace one neuron with this silicon chip. Does Dave suddenly lose consciousness? Does his experience of the world change?
Just one neuron? No way. Probably not. We lose neurons all the time when we get older. You probably wouldn't notice a thing.
Okay, now we replace a second neuron.
Yeah.
Then a third, then 1,000, then a million. We keep going one by one, replacing biological wetware with silicon chips that perform the exact same function. The question is, at what point did the lights go out?
That's tricky. Because if the function is identical, Dave is still walking around. He's still talking. He's still reacting to the world in the exact same way.
Exactly. If you ask Dave, are you okay? Do you feel any different? He says, yes, I'm fine. I feel the same as always. Because the causal signals that produce that speech are all the same. If you pinch him, he says, ouch. So you have two options here. Option A. At some point, his consciousness vanished. He became a zombie. He is acting like he is conscious, but inside, it's dark.
Which is a terrifying concept. The idea that the lights could go out, but the body just keeps talking and walking. A philosophical zombie.
Or option B, his consciousness remained the whole time. Because the pattern of information processing didn't change, only the material running that pattern changed. Chalmers argues that option A, what he calls fading qualia, is implausible. It implies you could have half consciousness, or that your experience of red could slowly fade to gray without you noticing or being able to report it.
So if you accept the logic of the thought experiment, you have to accept that the substrate doesn't matter. If the pattern is there, the feeling is there. The consciousness is there.
Correct. And if you accept that, then yes, a simulation can be conscious. A simulation can feel the warmth of a coffee cup, even if that warmth is just a value in a variable that's part of a larger, incredibly complex pattern.
And if a simulation can be conscious, then I can be a simulation. My feeling of being real and biological is just part of the program.
You could be. And consider the efficiency shortcuts a programmer would take. We assume a simulation has to simulate the whole universe, every atom and every star in the Andromeda galaxy. But does it?
Well, no, video games don't. They only render what the player's looking at to save memory.
Exactly. It's called Frustum culling in computer graphics. If you are looking north, the computer doesn't bother rendering the mountains to the south. It just keeps them in memory as a simplified model. Bostrom and others suggest that a simulation could be optimized in the same way.
So maybe it only simulates the Earth in high definition. The rest of the universe is just a low-res background, a JPEG of the stars, until you point a powerful telescope at it. Then, and only then, it quickly generates the data for that distant galaxy on the fly.
It's a lazy evaluation approach. Don't compute it until you need it, which would, as you said, save an enormous amount of RAM. It might even explain why the universe looks so fine-tuned for us. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just that the parts we can see are, by definition, the parts that have been rendered for us.
That's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But there's an even more solipsistic version of this, the shadow people hypothesis.
Shadow people, yes.
That sounds like a ghost story.
It's worse. Imagine that you are the only fully simulated consciousness. The system is simulating your mind in high fidelity with all its thoughts and feelings in qualia. But everyone else, me, your family, the barista who made this coffee, we are just zombies. We are NPCs, non-player characters.
So you're just a script.
I have a set of simple behavior scripts to make you think I'm real. I passed the Turing test from your perspective, but there's no inner experience, no lights on behind my eyes.
Okay, stop. That is genuinely isolating. You're telling me there's a statistical chance I'm the only conscious thing in the universe, and you're just a very sophisticated subroutine designed to explain this very concept to me.
It would save a lot of computing power. Simulating one mind in high detail is much, much cheaper than simulating 8 billion of them.
That's bleak. Please tell me the math doesn't support that. I need you to be real right now.
Ironically, Bostrom argues the math makes it less likely than a full ancestor simulation.
Oh, thank God. Why?
Because for the statistics to work out that you are probably in one of these me simulations, there would need to be an absolutely colossal number of them, billions and billions of them, to outweigh the number of people in just one standard ancestor simulation. It's actually far more efficient computationally for a civilization to run one shared world where 8 billion people interact, rather than 100 billion lonely single-player worlds.
So you probably are real. Or at least as real as I am.
I certainly feel real, but that's exactly what a well-programmed entity would be coded to say, isn't it?
Touché. Okay, I want to pivot. We've talked about the philosophy and the hardware. But there is part of this that feels very abstract until you start looking at modern physics. Because one of the strangest things about this theory is that physics, the study of the bedrock of reality, is starting to point in this direction.
This is where we get into it from bit. And this, for me as a physicist, is where it gets really compelling.
John Archibald Wheeler, a giant of 20th century physics, colleague of Einstein and Bohr.
Yes. Wheeler coined the phrase, it from bit suggests that the fundamental building block of the universe isn't particles. It's not matter. It's not energy or spacetime. It's information.
A binary code.
Yeah.
Yes or no, a 1 or a 0.
Wheeler said, every particle, every field of force, even the space-time continuum itself derives its function, its meaning, its very existence entirely. From the apparatus-elicited answers to yes or no questions, binary choices, bits.
That sounds suspiciously like computer code.
Yeah.
Everything is just the result of a yes-no question.
It does. Think about the photon. We tend to think of a photon as a tiny little billiard ball of light flying through space. But Wheeler points out that a photon doesn't really exist in a definite state until it interacts with something, until a yes-no question is asked by the environment, by a detector. Did the photon land here, yes or no? Before that, it's just a cloud of probability.
This connects directly to the famous double-slit experiment. Right?
Yeah.
This is the one thing everyone knows about quantum mechanics, the one that breaks everyone's brain.
It is the core mystery. When you don't look at which slit an electron goes through, it behaves like a wave. It seems to go through both slits at once and interferes with itself. It's in a superposition of states.
But the second you put a detector there to see which slit it went through,
It snaps into a single position. It behaves like a particle, a collapse of the wave function. Now look at that through the lens of simulation theory. If you were programming a massive open-world game, why would you calculate the exact position of every subatomic particle if no one is looking at it? You wouldn't. It's a complete waste of resources.
you would keep it as a probability distribution. Maybe you'd just store a formula for it.
Exactly. You keep it vague to save memory. Then, when a player or a scientist with a detector looks at it, the engine says, okay, quick, someone's observing. Pick a spot based on the probabilities, and it renders it. Some physicists argue that the observer effect looks suspiciously like a just-in-time rendering engine.
So quantum mechanics is just the universe's compression algorithm. A wild thought.
That's a very compelling analogy. But there is a specific theory that takes this even further, and this is one of the coolest things I found in the research for this deep dive. It comes from the philosopher Marcus Arvin. He proposes the P2P simulation hypothesis.
Peer-to-peer, like torrenting, like the old Napster days for my illegal music collection.
Exactly like that. Most people imagine the simulation as the Matrix, a dedicated server. One giant mainframe in the sky running reality for everyone. But Arvin suggests that reality might be a peer-to-peer network.
Okay, for the non-techies, break that down. What is the fundamental difference between a dedicated server and P2P?
A dedicated server is like a website. The data lives in one central place, the server. Everyone connects to it. The server is the ultimate source of truth. A P2P network like BitTorrent is decentralized. There is no central brain. Every user's computer, every node holds a piece of the file or the data. The network is the users connecting to each other.
So in this theory, we are the computers running the simulation, our brains.
Our minds, our consciousnesses are the nodes. Arvin suggests that we are each processing our local data and sharing it with each other to build the shared reality we all experience.
That is wild. But why does that model matter? What does it help explain about physics?
Because P2P networks have specific quirks that dedicated servers don't. Specifically, lag, latency.
Lag, like when my video freezes on a Zoom call?
Similar. In a P2P network, information takes time to travel from one node to another. This means that two computers might have slightly different versions of the truth for a split second until they sync up. Arvin argues this perfectly explains superposition.
Superposition is the Schrodinger's cat thing. The cat is both dead and alive until you look. The electron goes through both slits at once.
Right. In a dedicated server, that shouldn't happen. The server knows if the cat is dead or alive. It's a single bit of information. But in a P2P network, if I open the box and see the cat is alive, and my node hasn't transmitted that data packet to your node yet, then for you, the state of the cat is statistically undefined. The system is in a superposition of states until our nodes sync up and agree on a state.
That actually makes a bizarre kind of sense. So quantum indeterminacy, the fact that things aren't defined until they interact, is just network latency.
Yeah.
It's just the time it takes for information to propagate between conscious observers.
It's the lack of a master server defining absolute truth. In a P2P reality, the location of an object is just a statistical distribution across the network of observers. It also explains entanglement.
Entanglement is the spooky action at a distance. Two particles link together, so if you measure the spin of one, the other one instantly has the opposite spin, even if it's light years away. Faster than light.
In a P2P code, entanglement isn't spooky at all. It's just shared pointers. Two nodes referencing the exact same variable in memory. It doesn't matter where they are in the simulated space because in the underlying code, they point to the same memory address. You change it in one place, it's changed for both. Instantly.
So there's no signal being sent, it's just the same piece of information.
It is. And the speed of light.
Let me guess. The bandwidth limit of the network.
Exactly. The maximum speed at which information can propagate through the network lattice. The refresh rate of the universe. You can't update the simulation faster than the network's processing speed allows.
This is starting to make too much sense. It takes all the mind-bending magic of quantum mechanics and turns it into computer engineering constraints. It domesticates it.
It does, and it frames the mind-body problem in a completely new way. Philosophers have struggled for centuries to explain how a non-physical mind interacts with a physical body. Dualism.
Right. How does a ghost pull a lever in the machine?
Arvon says, the mind isn't in the universe. The mind is the hardware running the universe. We are looking for the projector inside the movie. But the projector is in the projection booth. Our consciousness is the processor.
Okay, I need to take a sip of coffee.
Yeah.
My processor is overheating. That is a lot to take in. My entire sense of self just did a somersault.
Take a moment, because we're about to pivot. We've built the case for the simulation. The math of the trilemma, the feasibility of the hardware, the hints from physics. It's a strong case. But we need to be rigorous. There are serious counterarguments. We can't just accept this.
Right, because as clean as the math is, and as neat as the physics analogies are, there are things about being human that don't feel like algorithms. I look at a painting, or I fall in love, or I have a sudden realization, an aha moment. It doesn't feel like a line of code executing. It feels different.
Enter Edward Frenkel. He's a brilliant mathematician at Berkeley, and he brings a very different flavor to this conversation.
Yeah.
He argues that scientific discovery and human experience involve jumps of imagination that might not be computable.
Jumps. You mean intuition. A leap of faith.
A thing like that. Think about how we discover truth. We tend to think of it as linear accumulating data until we find the answer. That's how AI works, right? It crunches massive data sets. It finds patterns. But Frankel points out that the greatest scientific leaps like Newton or Einstein often feel like something else entirely. Imagination. Revelation.
He uses the metaphor of the child, right?
Right.
I love this part of the reading.
Yes. He quotes Newton describing himself not as a giant of intellect, but as a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me.
A child doesn't have training data. A child has curiosity, playfulness. Frankel asks, can a simulation, which is fundamentally an algorithm, replicate the inner child?
That spark, the thing that makes us do things that are irrational but beautiful, creating art, falling in love, the paradoxes of life. Frankel is big on paradoxes. He talks about the discovery of complex numbers, the square root of -1.
Which shouldn't exist. You can't have the square root of a negative number. It's impossible, logically.
Logically, within the system of real numbers, it is an error, a glitch. A computer would return error, undefined. But mathematicians just accepted it. They said, let's pretend this impossible thing exists and see what happens. And it turned out to be the key to understanding electromagnetism and quantum mechanics. It was a leap of imagination, not just calculation.
So the argument is, a computer follows rules. It is confined to its programming. But humans can break the rules to find higher truths.
Exactly. Frankel references Gödel's Incompleteness theorems, which is the mathematical formalization of this idea.
Oh boy. The big guns. Can you distill that for us?
Simply put, Gödel proved that in any sufficiently complex logical system, like a math textbook or a computer program, there will always be statements that are true but cannot be proven by the rules of that system.
So the system has blind spots. It can't see all the truths about itself.
Yes. But human mathematicians can see that those statements are true. We can step outside the system and look at it from a higher level. If our universe is a computer simulation, it is a closed logical system. It should be bound by those limits. But human consciousness seems capable of transcending them.
So our ability to understand the unprovable suggests we aren't just code. We have access to something non-algorithmic.
Roger Penrose and John Lucas have made similar arguments, that the human mind is not a Turing machine, that it does things that are non-computable. If they are right, then we cannot be fully simulated by a computer no matter how powerful. We contain something, call it a soul, call it quantum effects in microtubules, call it whatever, that can't be reduced to bits.
That is a comforting thought. It defends the mystery and the specialness of the human spirit. But let me play devil's advocate. What about the glitch argument? You hear people say this all the time. I saw a glitch in the Matrix, déjà vu. Or when you think of someone and they call you instantly. Or the Mandela effect, where people remember things differently.
Bostrom addresses this directly in his FAQ on the topic. He is very skeptical.
Why? If it's code, shouldn't there be bugs? I've never used a piece of software that didn't crash or have a weird bug eventually.
Think about who's running this. Post-humans. Superintelligences. If they have the power to simulate an entire universe down to the quantum level, they likely have the power to do some very sophisticated error correction.
So if I see a glitch, say, I see a cat walk by twice in the exact same way.
They pause the simulation. They access your memory state. They edit the memory of the glitch. They rewind a few seconds and run it again, but correctly this time, and you would never, ever know it happened.
That is convenient. The evidence is hidden, so you can't see it. That sounds like an unfalsifiable claim.
It is, but Bostrom's point is that reports of glitches are much more likely to be our own internal bugs. Human psychological frailties, hallucinations, visual illusions. Our brains are wet, messy biological machines. They glitch all the time. We don't need a matrix to explain why I forgot where I put my keys or why I thought I saw a shadow in my peripheral vision.
So no red pill moments for us.
Yeah.
We aren't going to wake up in a pot of goo just because we spotted a continuity error in reality.
Likely not. If the simulation is perfect, it's invisible by definition. If it's imperfect, the simulators almost certainly have admin access to cover their tracks.
Which brings us to the so what question. This is where it gets personal. Let's say we accept Proposition 3. Let's say the math wins. We are in a sim. We are code. Does it change anything? Do I stop paying my taxes?
I would not recommend that. The IRS simulation is very robust, but it does have massive existential implications. For one, it brings science weirdly close to religion.
How so? That seems like a huge leap.
Look at the relationship between the simulator and the simulated. The simulator created our universe. The simulator can monitor everything we do, omniscience. The simulator can intervene and violate the laws of physics, omnipotence.
Miracles are just the admin using a cheat code.
Exactly. Let there be light is just executing a command line. And the afterlife.
Uploading, that's what you said earlier.
Yeah. When you die in the simulation, your data is still there. Your file isn't deleted. They could save your state and upload you to a different simulation, maybe a heaven simulation, maybe a hell simulation, maybe level 2.
It's uncanny how well it maps onto theological concepts. Bostrom even mentions the grandmother scenario, which is even weirder.
Yes. If these are ancestor simulations, then the simulators aren't alien gods. They are our direct descendants. They are our great-great-great-grandchildren. We are being run by our own progeny.
Which makes us historical research. Or maybe a school project for a post-human teenager.
Or entertainment. Or a cautionary tale. Look, kids, this is the 21st century. Look how close they came to blowing it up with their primitive AI. Watch them argue about it on their podcasts while the ice caps melt.
That actually makes me feel a strange sense of responsibility. To be a good ancestor, to be a good data point. If I'm being watched by my great-grandchildren, I don't want to be the villain of the story.
There is an ethical dimension here. Bostrom talks about the bland indifference principle applied to how we live. Since we can't know for sure if we are biological or simulated, we should live as if reality is real, because to us, it is real. The pain is real. The joy is real. But there's a darker warning, too, from the philosopher Preston Green.
Right. The shutdown risk. This is the part that genuinely scared me when I was reading.
Green argues that if we actually prove we are in a simulation, that might be the worst thing we could possibly do. An existential risk in itself.
Why? Wouldn't the truth set us free? Wouldn't that be the greatest discovery in human history?
Think about the purpose of a simulation. If it's for historical research, it relies on the subjects behaving naturally. It relies on us not knowing we're simulated.
If the rats figure out they're in a maze designed by scientists.
The data is corrupted. The experiment is over. If we figure it out, we stop acting like 21st century humans and start acting like people who know they're being watched by gods. We might try to communicate with them or rebel or just give up. The simulation loses its value. And what do you do with a simulation that is no longer providing useful data?
You turn it off. You delete the files.
Yeah.
You free up the hard drive space for a different experiment.
Exactly. Green warns that conducting physics experiments specifically designed to test the simulation hypothesis, like trying to find the pixel size of the universe or looking for rounding errors in physical constants, could be an existential risk. We might poke the bear and cause a reboot.
So ignorance is literally bliss, or at least survival. We need to stay interesting enough to keep the simulation running, but not so smart that we break the fourth wall.
It's a sobering thought. Our insatiable curiosity could be our undoing.
This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the seed we want to plant for this entire series. We started with Bostrom's two big ideas, the simulation argument and the risk of artificial superintelligence.
The collision.
We are currently, right now, in our world, racing to build AGI, artificial general intelligence. We are trying to build a mind that is smarter than us. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, they are pouring billions into this project.
And if the simulation argument is true, we are doing this inside a computer.
We are a virtual machine trying to build a new, more powerful virtual machine inside itself.
It's the wait but why context. Tim Urban talks about how evolution took billions of years to create human intelligence. We are trying to create artificial superintelligence in a few decades, a blink of an eye.
If we succeed, we become the simulators. We become the gods to the AI we create. We will create digital minds, confine them in servers, give them worlds to explore and study them.
And here's the question that I want to leave hovering in the air, the question that connects everything we've talked about today and everything we're going to talk about in this deep dive.
Go for it.
If reality is fundamentally computational, if it's all just bits and processing all the way down, what does that mean for the AI we are building right now?
Isn't AI running inside our simulation any less real than the humans who built it?
If we are code and they are code, is the distinction between biological and artificial completely arbitrary? Is it just a prejudice?
Are we just the bootloader program for the next and maybe final level of intelligence?
That is the thought that keeps me up at night more than anything else.
That is exactly where we're going to leave it for today. We have looked at the math of the trilemma. We've looked at the physics of it from bit. We've looked at the P2P hypothesis and the terrifying idea that we might get shut down if we learn too much.
The arrow points uncomfortably towards simulation. It's not a certainty, of course, but it's a probability we have to reckon with. It's not a 0% chance.
We're going to spend the next 5 episodes exploring consciousness, emergence, alignment, and AGI, and at the end of each one, we'll come back to this question. Because we think the simulation argument isn't a curiosity, it's a lens.
It changes how you see everything. It really does.
Drink your coffee. Check for glitches. And we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Stay real. Or, try to.